credible case of obstruction of justice against the President of the United States. You don't want to hear what we think about that. So we'll bring in Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus and lifelong Democrat, who definitely has a take on that. So, Richard Blumenthal, this comes after the article in the New York Times that outlines that the President thought about firing or may have ordered the firing of Robert Mueller, but it, of course, never happened. Is there an obstruction case being built against this president? And if so, is it a credible one?
I think the answer is yes and no. I think that the special counsel is trying to build an obstruction case. That's why he's interviewing people who are witnesses to the alleged obstruction. But there's no credible case because under the Constitution, a president cannot be charged for merely exercising his constitutional authority under Article 2. What Senator Blumenthal referred to is cases where a president destroys evidence. There's no evidence of that. That's what President Nixon did. Nixon was charged with obstruction of justice for ordering his underlings to lie to the FBI, paying hush money, and destroying evidence. President Clinton was charged with obstruction for allegedly lying to the grand jury and at a deposition. But if the president simply exercises constitutional authority, namely firing an underling, which he's entitled to do, telling the FBI not to investigate a particular person, which he's entitled to do, pardoning people, which he hasn't done yet, thinking about maybe whether he should fire the special counsel, that's not obstruction of justice under the Constitution.
Professor, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't this supposed to be about collusion?
It is supposed to be about collusion, but of course they soon discovered that collusion is not a crime. And so they're now trying to create crimes out of the way the president allegedly defended himself against the charges of collusion. It's a typical prosecutorial tactic. You can't get him for the substantive crime, so you get him for the alleged cover-up or obstruction. That's why Martha Stewart went to jail. But Martha Stewart wasn't the president of the United States. The president of the United States has constitutional authority to do what President Trump is accused or alleged to have done. It would create a constitutional crisis and a separation of powers issue if a president was ever charged with merely exercising his constitutional authority because a prosecutor didn't approve of his motive. Everybody has mixed motives. And to start creating thought crimes out of a president's motives would create a serious constitutional conflict.
Professor, so there is talk right now that John Kerry, now it hasn't been confirmed, but there's talk that John Kerry is meddling in the Middle East peace process. What are your thoughts on that, that he's using some sort of emissary to convey messages to people not to work with the Trump administration on the Palestinian side? What do you say to that?
Well, he's denied it, but if it's true, it's a very serious matter. A person who's not in office should not be interfering with the foreign policy of the United States. Jimmy Carter did it when he tried to persuade Yasser Arafat not to accept the Clinton-Barack peace deal of 2000-2001. And if John Kerry is telling Arafat indirectly not to accept peace offers or not to sit down and negotiate, but to play for time, he's doing something serious. Look, he's very lucky that the Logan Amendment is not enforced because it would violate the terms of the Logan Amendment. It's interesting, the Democrats are trying to resurrect the Logan Amendment. The Logan Amendment is what prohibits private citizens from negotiating policy. It's not enforced, but if it were, Kerry would be guilty of it if he, in fact, did what he's accused of.
And just to be fair, Secretary Kerry's people pushing back on these reports.
Of course they are.
Well, let's find out the truth. It's important to know because if he's undercutting the current administration on foreign policy, that's a serious matter.
Absolutely. And also potentially saying this guy will only be around for another year, so don't worry about it. And again, not confirmed, but reported. Another topic we're going to get your take on. There's a photo that has emerged from 2005 recently from the Congressional Black Caucus. It was buried by them. A picture of then, I believe it was candidate or Senator Obama with Louis Farrakhan in a photo that was taken then, but the photographer on Tucker said, he was on Tucker Carlson talking about, hey, well, we've got the sound. We'll play what the photographer said about that photo. Listen.
A staff member from the Black Caucus called me and said, we have to have the picture back. And I was kind of taken aback. The thought was Minister Farrakhan and his reputation would hurt someone trying to win acceptance in the broad cross-section of people who want that acceptability in the crossover, you might say, can't stand the inquisition that comes with being associated with Minister Farrakhan.
So, Professor, why would Barack Obama not want a picture with Louis Farrakhan in the public?
Because Louis Farrakhan is a virulent anti-Semite. He's called Judaism a gutter religion. He's anti-American. He is a horrible, horrible human being. And if I had known that the president had posed smilingly with him when he was a senator, I would not have campaigned for Barack Obama. It would have influenced my decision. I threatened to leave the Democratic Party if Keith Ellison were elected as chairman because of his association with Farrakhan. You don't associate with a bigot. You don't associate with an anti-Semite. There should be zero tolerance for that kind of bigotry. And if Barack Obama associated with him, if the Black Caucus invited him, I don't blame them for trying to suppress the truth, because that's a really horrible truth. We should have nobody in public office associating with a bigot like the Reverend Farrakhan.
Thank you, Professor. Well, it'll be interesting to see if there are other things that become uncovered as we move forward, and the Barack Obama presidency is in our rearview mirror. Things will pop up.
Well, we need the truth about every presidency and every president and every candidate.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
You might say that they were unmasked.